Help support the companies that support our community. I hope everybody's doing well. Don't have a project this week, but we are going to go over how to align the head and the tailstock. So I've been getting some questions on this, so I'm going to show you a couple of tricks I know, and if after you watch the video there's some other ones, please leave them below in the comments and help everybody out. Alright, let me get the camera moved over and I'll show you how to get it lined up. Alright. First thing you need to do to check and see if your head and your tailstock are lined up is put a spur center in the headstock and a live center in the tailstock, slide them up there and lock it down. So those 2 points need to come together perfectly to line it up. So that's the first thing you need to do to test to see if it's even off, or you need to change it or fix it or anything. All right. So the reason I brought this up was because lately I had a couple of questions about the stainless steel inserts for bottle stoppers, but this applies to everything as far as turning when you have the head and the tailstock lined up. So, but that's why I was doing that. So if you put a Jacobs chuck in there in your tailstock and put a 7/16 drill bit in there, and this is kicked off to the side, and you drill the hole, it's going to make a bigger hole than 7/16. Whatever it is you're drilling out, it's going to make a bigger hole. It needs to be lined up with the headstock as close as you can get it, so that it's drilling actually straight in. So if you don't do that, it's going to make a bigger hole, no matter whether you're doing bottle stoppers or even if you're drilling into anything, even with a Forstner bit, it will kick it off. So there's a couple little quick fixes. Another thing too is when, let's say you were doing like a finial or something like that, and you had a piece in a chuck, you have the head and the tailstock up there, you turn your finial and you pull the tailstock away and it starts flopping a little bit. That is because the headstock and the tailstock are not lined up. It's putting pressure on it and it's letting you turn it, and it seems like it's true when you're turning it, but as soon as you pull it away, it releases the pressure and it goes off center. So that's another way to tell if they're not in line. So a couple little things. So my lathe actually locks down to the ways. It doesn't have bolts in it. If your lathe has a pivoting head, that is where you can pivot it off to the side to turn something like a bowl. They make a tool that goes, I don't have one, but they make a tool similar to this. It has a Morris taper on both sides. So you would slide it into the tailstock, bring it up and slide it. Pull this out for a sec. And you would slide it right into the headstock, and that will line everything back up. Line it all back up, tighten it down, lock it down, and that will line everything back up that way. So I don't have one of the tools. I'll try and find a link and put it in the description, but it's just a Morris taper on both sides, and it will line everything back up, because if you're moving the headstock off to the side, you need to be able to get it right back where it needs to go. So another thing is, my headstock just slides on the ways. It's not bolted down. So some lathes are actually bolted to the bed. So those 4 bolts that are holding it down, you need to check those, especially if you've been turning with the lathe for a long time. They could be loose or they could even be bent, and just take them out, look at them, make sure they're okay. And if it is off a little bit too, you can put one of those little tools in there, line everything back up, and then tighten those 4 bolts down, and that would help get it back straight. The other thing is too, depending on what lathe you have, it could be something as simple as it's not level. So if you put your spur center, and what did I do with it? Your live center into the position right there, line it all up, and it's off center. you can simply use a pry bar to lift up one of the legs, and if depending on what lathe you have, it will flex a little bit, and you can adjust it that way. It could be something as simple as one of the legs was a little bit lower and it's kicking it off center. So it's just as easy as that. If you've done all these things and it still won't line up, you know, it might be the lathe. You know, that's really the only other thing that I can think of. If you have any other ideas or tips on how to get them lined up, those are only the 3 things that I can really think of or that I've come across to get everything lined back up. You can't put like if it was like high or if it was low on the headstock, you might be able to put some type of shim under there if it was a bolted down lathe. But as far as like back and forth, you can simply adjust it with the legs if you need to. But they should line up perfectly, and you need to test that every once in a while too, especially if you're doing a lot of drilling. So yeah, if it's off just a teeny bit, it will still push it to this, when you're drilling the hole, it will make the hole bigger than it's supposed to be. All right, those are the 3 things I can think of. Please, if you have any other tips, leave them in the comments below. I will pin them to the top, or maybe mention it in the next video or something, but please try and help everybody out. I will get a link to one of these little tools with the Morse taper on both sides, especially if you have a lathe where the headstock moves, where you can pivot it around. It's probably the fastest way to just get everything lined back up. You just slide that in. But yeah, just something as simple as putting a little shim or something under one of the legs too, depending on your lathe, it could flex a little bit. All right, I hope this video helped, and we won't see you next week. We won't have a video next week. We're gonna be at the Oregon Woodturning Symposium. If you're gonna be in Albany at the show, please stop by the booth and say hi. All right, take care.